Good evening. We are so glad you've joined us. My name is Mike Hutchinson, and I'll be the moderator for this evening's forum. This forum is sponsored by Arizona State University and the Citizens Clean Election Commission. By way of information, ASU is a nonpartisan organization. That is, they never support or oppose any candidate or any political party. For this reason, the Clean Elections Commission has chosen ASU to conduct its candidates forum in Legislative District 16. The Clean Elections Act is a campaign finance reform measure which was passed by the Arizona voters in 1998. Participation as a clean elections candidate is strictly voluntary. The system provides full public funding for qualified candidates who illustrate the support of their constituents by gathering $5 qualifying contributions from registered voters in their district. They must also adhere to contribution and spending limits and may not accept money from special interest groups. And they agree to participate in these forums. This election cycle, the Citizens Clean Elections Commission has also invited traditional campaigning candidates to participate. We're going to have audience participation and questions tonight, so if you hold your cards up that you were given, one of our volunteers will pick it up and deliver it to me. We screen questions for clarity, to eliminate duplications or speeches or personal attacks on candidates. If you need another card, please just hold up your hand and we'll get one delivered to you. There is an independent timer who will see that all the candidates have equal time for answers to questions and will tell them whether time up. And Kathy in the front row is our independent timer. She works at the university and is showing the candidates the timing system. We expect all audience members to give the candidates a fair and uninterrupted hearing, no matter how strongly you may agree or disagree with anything being said. This means no applause, outbursts, or cheers. Also, before we get started, we ask everyone to please turn off or silence any mobile phones or other electronic devices you may have with you. Our format this evening will be opening statements. Each candidate will be given 3 minutes. When we start going through our audience questions, each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each audience question. Finally, each candidate will have 3 minutes for their closing statements. The candidates this evening running for Senate are Mr. David Farnsworth, Republican. Welcome, David. Mr. Taylor MacArthur, Republican. Welcome, Taylor. The candidates this evening running for the House of Representatives are Mr. John Fillmore, Republican and Clean Elections candidate. Welcome, John.
Thank you.
Mr. Adam Stevens, Republican, and Ms. Kelly Townsend, Republican and Clean Elections candidate. Welcome.
Thank you.
The order in which the candidates will speak is determined alphabetically by last name and will progress from that starting point. The closing will be in reverse order. Will you start? Mr. David Farnsworth, will you start the opening remarks, please?
Thank you, Mike. My name is State Senator David Farnsworth. I'm a third-generation Arizonan. I am very grateful to my wife, Robin, who is with me here tonight. It's been a long day. We've been out repairing signs from the last monsoon storm, and she's been a great support to me, and I'm really grateful that she is my best friend and my most solid supporter. I would like to say that off the beginning, I oppose Obamacare, Brewer Care, and Medicaid expansion. Same thing, really. I oppose Common Core. We need high standards for our students here in Arizona, but those standards need to be put together by Arizona parents and Arizona educators. I believe strongly that this should be a local issue and should not be coming from somewhere outside the state. We need great schools in Arizona. There's nothing more important than educating our young people. But throwing more money at the challenges we have is not the solution. I met a young man working down at Circle K a few months ago. He had just graduated from high school, and I was shocked when he told me that he felt like he hadn't learned anything in school. Now, that's a pretty broad and devastating comment to make, just graduating. He said he had not learned anything. Now, I'm sure that was an exaggeration. I desperately hope it was an exaggeration. Nevertheless, we all know we have challenges in the school, very important thing we need to address. And my idea for addressing that and other challenges is to involve people in the district. And so I spend a lot of time promoting that idea and asking people to join legislative power groups, which are small groups that will help us make things better in Arizona. I am pro-life, pro-Second Amendment. I've been an entrepreneur all of my life. I'm an advocate of the American dream, which starts simply with an idea. Now, a question we have to ask ourselves is why we've been in a recession so long. And I would say it's because of government interference. Governments are out of control on all levels. I love America, I love this state, and I am here because I want to make things better. New businesses need help to get off the ground, and governments are not doing that, but making it more difficult. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Farnsworth. Mr. Fillmore, your opening remarks.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here. My name is John Fillmore. I am a candidate for the House of Representatives. I have been in a state representative in the past, and when they did the redistricting 2 years ago, I lost a seat when they moved around. Who am I? I'm a small businessman. I own a company called the Weather Shacks on Main Street. I have lived and had a business in the district for 27 years. I have hired and fired. I've been here when the district was predominantly mobile home parks instead of bar tile roofs. I love East Mesa. I've seen the changes. I know what's going on, and I want to represent it. When I was in the legislature 2 years ago, we balanced the budget in one of the worst times in our history. We were way underwater. We stood up to what had to be done and did the hard things. We cut almost $6 billion from the budget and balanced it, and we left it. And now it's unraveling. In the last 2 years, we have seen members of the legislature vote for Medicaid expansion and Obamacare, which is going to come down the road, the pike at us. We are going to be in deep trouble within 2 to 3 years. Our mantra should be at this time in our state, jobs, jobs, jobs. Not socialism, not federal government handouts. We don't educate our kids. David is right on that thing. And what we have seen here is that we've seen an expansion of government. You know, the average federal employee makes over $127,000. They surround themselves with lucrative retirement programs and things. And the working people here in our state of Arizona are struggling just to make ends meet. We need to focus on jobs. We need to focus on opportunity and the greatness of what America is all about. We have some unique opportunities here. I believe with the Red Rock Transit Union Pacific yards down in Eloy that Pinal can take and lead. We have some opportunities with Superstition Vistas just south of Apache Junction, which has become waylaid because of government intrusion and things of that nature. I would like to return to the legislature. We have an opportunity. We have 227 school districts. We can get rid of the redundancy and duplication. We only have 15 counties. We can save millions of dollars and teach our kids. I say thank you. I look forward to answering the questions tonight. My name is John Fillmore, and I look forward to trying to serve you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fillmore. Mr. MacArthur, your opening statement.
Yeah, thank you. I also want to thank everyone for coming tonight. I appreciate you taking the time to come out and learn more about the candidates that are running for office. I think that we need to, encourage people to be more involved. So thank you for being here. I want to thank my family for being here as well, and my wife Lindsay for being here and all the support that she's given me in this campaign. So thank you, Lindsay. I'm running for the Arizona Senate because I'm concerned about our state's future. And I was with a group of women the other day. We were at a Republican Women's Club meeting. And we were sitting there in a circle, and we were talking about the state's future. We were talking about their children's future. And I asked them a simple question. Looked around the room, and I just said, how many of you really believe that your children will have more and better opportunities than you've had in your life, in their life? And I waited and looked around the room. I said, just raise your hand if you believe that that's true. And I waited, and I looked around the room, and no one in that room raised their hand. In a group of mothers and grandmothers, people who, I know from personal experience, my mom, she cares deeply about her children's future, worries about it, thinks about it, prays about it. And yet no one in that room raised their hand. We live in a country where every single generation has done better than the last. Every generation has improved. And no one raised their hand in that room. And that's why I'm running for the Arizona Senate. Because I understand how those mothers feel. I understand the frustration when you look around and you see our struggling economy still, while other states are recovering, while other states are doing well. We just lost 40,000 jobs in June. And I understand their frustration and their worry for the future. So I believe that we need people to go to the state Senate who will focus on the issues that matter, who will focus on jobs and the economy, who will focus on making sure that we have an excellent education system, who will focus on fulfilling the primary responsibility of government, which is protecting its citizens, making sure that we have safe neighborhoods for our families. I think it's important that we have people that focus on those things. And, I just want to say that in doing this, I'm doing it because I want to serve the people of Legislative District 16. I'd like to listen to you. I will listen to you. And I'll work on those issues that are most important to you. And that is what this is all about. That's what representative government is about. So I look forward to talking to you more today about the issues that are important to our state. And I thank you again for coming. And once again, I'm Taylor MacArthur, running for the Arizona Senate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. MacArthur. Mr. Stevens, your opening statement.
Also, not to be too redundant, but I do want to thank everybody for being here tonight. And I know there's usually a lot of other things that are easier to do and more fun to do than listen to a bunch of people talk about politics, but this is what this country was founded on, was your average citizen getting out and getting involved and understanding when things aren't quite working right, that sometimes it does come down to the people, not the quote-unquote experts, but sometimes we do need the people to stand up and get involved and have a voice. I'm running for the State House because I have seen my community and many other communities across this state basically get ignored because of personal political agendas of people in office who are trying to do what they think is right without understanding that the role of a representative is not to go to the Capitol to do what you want to do, but is to go to the Capitol to do what the people need to have done. And Mr. MacArthur alluded to the fact that we lost over 40,000 jobs in the last month. Over the summer, we've lost almost close to 60,000 jobs in this state. Arizona sits at near the bottom of the country for job creation. And in 2014, our legislature managed to pass almost 280 new laws. That is a definition of a government that is doing stuff but isn't accomplishing anything. And I look at that from the perspective of a business owner, from somebody who has experience across the board, from manufacturing to sales to real estate. And I think to myself and I say, how is there any way that you can look at that and say that that's a success? And I know there are a lot of people who will run around and they'll throw, they'll say, well, we've done this and we've done that and we've done this. But the end of the day, as a business owner, I look at it and you can throw at a board. If you have a business and you have to report to a board and you say, well, I did this and I did that and I did this and I did that, and your board says, yeah, but we lost, money this year and, we can't meet the demands of our clients, that's a failure. There's no way to cover that fact. And I think we need people with real experience who have been in those environments. It's easy to say that someone has experience, but until you've actually been there, it's not real experience. And that's why I'm running, is for my community, because I have seen, like Taylor said, You know, I'm the youngest person running in this race for the state house. And I look at it and I say to myself that my parents grew up in a country that doesn't exist anymore. And my children will grow up in a country that I won't even recognize. And that needs to stop. And that's why I'm running to serve. And I thank you again for coming out. I'm Adam Stevens and look forward to talking to you tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Ms. Townsend, your opening comments?
Thank you. And I wanted to thank ASU also for hosting this event and Clean Elections as well. And I can tell you it feels really good to look out into the audience and see so many familiar faces, and faces of whom I've known for several years from the very beginning of the Tea Party movement when we first started getting going. And you know, I look at Mike Peake and I look at Vonnie Hammer, and I remember those early days, and I remember all of us wondering, what can we do? What can I do as a person? I'm just one person. But the American people have bonded together and had said, we've had enough. And I feel very honored to be able to be a voice for you, to be able to serve in this capacity, and to speak for you at the state legislature. I think that each of us does what we can in our own way. I think that some people are attracted to national politics, some people are attracted to city and school board, and I explored all of those areas, and I felt very comfortable coming to the state and dealing with issues that concern the state. I found myself internationally looking at the breakdown of Yugoslavia and all different forms and levels of government, and I feel that I am right where I need to be. And so I decided after my first term that, yes, I do want to run for re-election. I have been honored by being able to represent you and to put forth good legislation and to be an effective legislator. I was in the top third of my peers in the House for percentage of my bills being passed. And so, you know, it feels very good. And at the same time, it's very frustrating because I saw some things there that were very disappointing, to say the least, that the rule of law was not followed. And one of the things that we came together for in the beginning, we noticed that Chicago politics had made its way to Washington. And now I have seen Chicago politics come from Washington into Arizona. And I think it's important that if you're going to vote, and when you cast your vote, that you know that the person you're voting for has integrity, that regardless of where they are on the issues, we want them to be right on the issues. But more important, you want them to have integrity. You want them to put this first. You want them to put the Lord first. And that is who's first in my life and my children and this Constitution. And I can tell you that it's been my pleasure to support you, to defend this Constitution, and to go to this daily and seek a return to a Republican, honest, good, decent form of government that gets out of the way of the people and lets them flourish in their business. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Townsend. We're now going to start the question part of the program, and we have questions from the audience. So we'll start with those. And again, if anyone in the audience has other questions as we proceed, please put your hand up. We'll collect them. So we're going to start with Mr. Farnsworth on the first question, and we'll go down the panel, and then the second one we'll start with Mr. Fillmore and go down the panel. So let me start with the first question. Mr. Farnsworth, have you ever run for office as a candidate from a different party? And if so, why did you switch party affiliation?
Thank you for the question, Mike. No, I have been a lifelong Republican. I was a precinct committeeman 30 years ago, precinct captain. I have been involved more or less according to my family needs and my personal circumstances. I believe very strongly in the Republican platform, particularly the pro-life, pro-Second Amendment. I was talking to someone today who really didn't have an understanding. He hadn't registered to vote, and we had a short discussion, and I said, if you just look at the two platforms, the Democrat platform and the Republican platform, it is very simple to determine which camp you lay in. And I explained that, explained a few things. He said, well, I'm a Republican then. But the issue is clouded because so many times people look at Republican politicians and Democrat politicians and they don't like what they see because they don't follow the party platform. And so it becomes very confusing. That's why so many people here in Arizona are bailing out of both the Democrat Party and the Republican Party and becoming independents. That is so important that we explain the true principles of being a Republican, which is limited government and the fact that the proper role of government is to protect the liberty of the people. Thank you.
Mr. Fillmore, same question. Have you ever run for office as a candidate from a different party? And if so, why did you switch party affiliation?
Yes, I did run for office as a different candidate, as a Democrat in 1988. I was a Republican. I was a big backer of Ronald Reagan when he first ran. Jimmy Carter alienated me. I came from Massachusetts. In 1988, I changed parties from being a Republican to a Democrat to run against Jay Rhodes, who was a sitting congressman, junior, in the state of Arizona, who said in regards to the federal deficit, "Don't blame me." He was one of 434 people in the United States Congress, and they are responsible for our budget. So I changed parties to the Democratic Party because I knew I could have a bigger sounding base. Now I want to say something. When I was raised, the Democratic Party was conservative. John F. Kennedy, by today's standards, would be a Republican because of where the Republican Party has gone. I am very conservative. I'm considered to the far right of some of the people sitting up here at this table because I believe in the greatness of America, the Constitution, and the things are right. Many of our Democratic people do too as well, many in the party. What has happened is the parties have left us, the people. In 1991, I chaired, funded out of my own pocket, one of the first drives to allow independents to vote in a primary because I believe voting is very important. My love of this country is not an allegiance to a party, Democrat or Republican. But I want to say this, the Republican Party is solid. The Democratic Party actually removed the word God from their party at one time. I am a Republican, I am a conservative, and I am an American. I love this country. I owe no allegiance to a party. I owe allegiance to the Constitution and to conservative standards. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. MacArthur, same question. Have you ever run for office as a candidate from a different party? And if so, why did you switch party affiliation?
Okay. Yeah, no, I have not. This is my first time ever running for office. And, you know, I guess you could say I'm a lifelong Republican, or I registered Republican as soon as I could. And there's a reason for that. And actually, if I can take the time to talk about that a little bit. You know, growing up, I was always taught a lesson that I think most of us learned growing up. And a lesson that we've taught, I think, as well, is that if you work hard, you can succeed. It's a really simple principle. And for me, that's one of the foundations of the Republican Party, is that we believe in people. We believe that if you're willing to work hard, if you're willing to put in the effort, that you can succeed. So that's why I'm a Republican, because I believe in people. I believe in the people of Arizona. I do think there's another part to that, though. I think that if you are willing to work hard and there are opportunities available to you, then you can succeed. But if we allow government to grow too much, if we allow government to crowd out private business, to overregulate, to overtax, we can lessen the number of opportunities that are available to people in our state. And so I think that's why it's so extremely important that we elect competent people with the right background and experience to move Arizona in the right direction. So, lifelong Republican, I'm glad to be running, and I hope that I'll have your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stevens, same question.
I've never actually run before, but I've never been anything but a registered Republican. Even before I registered as a Republican, my family has always been a very conservative family who's believed in conservative values. Since one of my heroes in my life growing up was my grandfather, who came to this country in 1949 after World War II. And he didn't ask for any favors except to be allowed to raise his family without having to worry about being arrested in the middle of the night. He asked for an opportunity to start a business because he had a trade that he believed in, that he knew he could sell to people and provide a better future for his kids, and they would provide a better future for their children. And growing up, listening to those principles of hard work, someone who didn't take a vacation for the first several years of living in this country, and then as soon as they could actually take a vacation, he decided to take it in the car because it was more affordable. But I always grew up with the principles of you work hard, you don't ask for any shortcuts or any favors. And those are principles that I most associate with the Republican Party when the party is at its best. As Mr. Fillmore said, I believe the first thing that any representative running in this district or any district or for any office, the first thing you should be concerned about is listening to the people and listening to their concerns and what they want to see done. You have your principles and you stand by those principles, but your primary responsibility is to represent the people and to listen to their concerns and not run just to simply go to office to do what you want to do. It's not about any of us. There's a much greater institution that we are all running to serve, and that is something that we should all be respectful of and mindful of, and that's why I've been a Republican my whole life.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Ms. Townsend, same question. Have you ever run for office, a candidate from a different party, and if so, why did you switch your party affiliation?
No, I have not. Let's talk about the planks of the Republican Party, of which I'm affiliated with. One of their planks is pro-life. And I remember as a young woman finding out what partial birth abortion was, and I was horrified. And I have worked with pregnant women for most of my adult life as what's called a doula, which is a birth coach, or even more importantly, someone who fights for the rights of parents to make decisions for themselves on their medical care and that for their child. And so it's natural for me, and of course my faith. I believe that life begins at conception. And I was co-founder of the Phoenix 40 Days for Life back in 2007, and I have received the Arizona Right to Life endorsement. The Second Amendment, pro-gun, I received the NRA endorsement in 2013, and I hear they're going to be announcing tomorrow who they're endorsing, and I'm looking forward to seeing if my name's on that list. I've received the endorsement of gun rights across America, and I passed a bill this last session that the governor signed into law that was pro-gun. I'm pro-family. I think the family is the foundation of our society, and wherever the family goes, that's the direction of our society, and I'm concerned about that. I was co-chair of the Veterans Caucus, and the military is extremely important to me. If any veterans are here in this audience, I thank you for your service. And personal responsibility, I think, is very important. And when we take responsibility for our own actions and not blame them, or try and make excuses, that type of thing. So I am, I think, right down on the party plank line, and I'm proud of that.
Thank you very much. So our second audience question: why are the Common Core standards good or bad? And Mr. Fillmore, you'll answer the question first on this round.
The Common Core standards are bad for the state of Arizona, for our kids, because of what they're entailing. First of all, they're going to be very, very expensive for the state of Arizona to actually produce. And all it is, it's another bureaucratic nightmare coming down from the federal government to the state, which has really, in my opinion, no authority, because that is education is a states' rights issue, not the federal government's. Common Core, which came from the federal government, is supposed to set testing standards. That's all it does. Now, we have kids that I have a senior in high school, didn't know who Christopher Columbus was. I want you to think about that. And part of the Common Core questions get so alienated, and they don't deal with the actual issues of education. They're talking about teaching World War II without mentioning Adolf Hitler. Now, how can we do things of that nature? What we need to do is focus on basic common sense. We need to establish that the teachers need to have control of their classrooms. We used to teach Latin and Greek classics in junior high. Now we teach remedial English in college. Now, I don't have a formal education beyond high school, But I will match the successes that I've had in my life from the opportunities in America with anybody. And it's our educational system which is being dismantled and stealing from our children that which is important, their future and our future. And Common Core is just another example of what is wrong.
Mr. MacArthur, why are the Common Core standards good or bad?
Well, first of all, I think that any time you try and put something in one camp or another, good or bad, black or white, the world doesn't work that way. There are a lot of shades of gray. The first thing I want to say is that I will fight federal overreach into our education system tooth and nail if elected to the Senate. I don't think the federal government has any place in our education system. I don't think the federal government should be telling us how to teach our kids. And I will, be sure to fight that and fight for local control. I think that we need to make sure that our local municipalities maintain control of what we're teaching our children. With that being said, we have to have high standards for our kids, though. We have to have high standards. And the standards that we developed as a state, the Ames test, it didn't work. We had to scrap the whole thing. I want to talk about spending a lot of money. I mean, we spent a ton of money on the Ames test, developing it, and trying to have a high-stakes test that kids were going to pass before they could graduate from high school. And look at where we've come. So I'm not saying that the Common Core standards or the college and career ready standards was what they're called now. I'm not saying that's the end-all, be-all. I think we can definitely improve upon those and that Arizonans can come together and find a solution for our children, find a solution for our schools. I think that is for sure, but we need to have high standards. We have to. But standards are just one part of reforming our education system. I think there's a lot of other things that we can do. I think that we need to make sure that we hold teachers and administrators accountable. Once again, it goes back to having those standards, though, to hold them accountable against. I think that we need to make sure that parents have the ability to make choices for their children's education. That when parents have multiple excellent options to choose from, they know what's best for their kids' education. So I'll fight for parental choice in education. I'll fight for high standards in our schools. They don't have to be any certain set of standards, and I don't want federal overreach at all, but I do think we need high standards for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. MacArthur. Mr. Stevens, same question?
All right. I think the situation we have with Common Core is what happens when we decide to take a complex issue like education and put it on a bumper sticker. Because I remember before Common Core, as Mr. MacArthur said, Ames was the solution to the problems we had. Before Ames, it was no child left behind or no teacher left standing. And now we've got race to the top or fall to the bottom, and it's become almost a joke when it comes to solving the problem with education. But the best thing we can do as a state is to set the general guidelines of what we want to see our children accomplish for their future. And I believe the first thing we should do is establish an education system. The education system should be one that is based on individual accomplishment and the individual needs of a child, and should empower a parent to have the right to choose where that child goes to school, because no parent should be forced to feel like their child has to go to a bad school. I've seen what happens when parents feel like they have no choice, and what you end up with are higher crime rates, you see higher unemployment, and you see a loss in the American dream, and you see communities fall apart. And it's very depressing, and it's very real when that happens. I believe the first thing we should be doing is sitting down with teachers, parents, even children. I mean, we act as if in education that children are just in this petri dish to be moved around. We should be asking kids what they want, what they see and what they don't see. We should be sitting down with the administrators to tell them that we don't want public education, or we don't want you necessarily to lose your job, but we're sick and tired of subsidizing failure. And if you're not going to do what is best for our children and our communities, you're going to be out of a job, because it's not the responsibility of the taxpayer to provide you with a lifestyle that you've become accustomed to. And so that's what I'm looking forward to fighting for when I'm at the State House.
Thank you. Ms. Townsend, why are Common Core standards good or bad?
Thank you. The question was, why are they good or bad? So I'm going to say why they are bad. Okay, so when this was put together by the governors, there was no public debate. There was no parental involvement in this process. I believe in local control, and I think that needs to be brought back to us. As a mother, I would like to have a say. I want to see what they're coming up with these standards and the curriculum. You know what? Private and public entity lines were blurred while they were developing the park assessment, and they had, a park is a private group that they were contracting with Arizona, and they brought in their state leads to come in and test this out, a private company coming into public schools, testing this out, using the board, the people who work for the state board, as the test leads in the schools, without other companies having that opportunity. So right there, that's an issue, that you have this public entity coming in, having access to the, private entity having access to the public entity without fair competition from the others. There's big money behind it. There's $200 million coming from the Gates Foundation. Park received $185 million from the federal government to develop the Common Core-based test questions. And, you know, there's concern about the children's personal information being available to the federal government. And I believe that we ought to repeal this. I don't like the idea that if Ames is bad, then the next step is to just hand it over to the federal government or hand it over to a national group. I think we should go back to the drawing board. I still believe in Arizona. I still believe that we have what it takes to fix the problems that we had and to not just give up and hand everything over. Anytime that you take that money from the federal government, it has strings attached, and we don't want those strings. We need to take care of our own and take the reins and do it ourselves.
Thank you. Ms. Townsend? Mr. Farnsworth? Why are Common Core standards good or bad?
Thank you. I have been very clear from the beginning that I opposed strongly Common Core, along with Medicaid expansion. Part of the reason is because as I attend District 16 meetings on a regular basis, meetings of all the precinct committeemen, our district is strongly opposed to Common Core and Medicaid expansion. Now, I noticed that my opponent doesn't very often come to those meetings. I checked the records, and he only attended 4 times last year and not once this year. So that's a concern, and he's expressed concern about standards, and I just want to set the record straight. According to the Arizona Capital Times, and maybe they were incorrect, but in the article, When Moderates Attack, it clearly listed Mr. MacArthur as supportive of Common Core and Medicaid expansion, and myself as opposed. Now, it is very true that I am strongly opposed. I think that the biggest problem with them is, as Kelly Townsend mentioned, it is not local. You go back to the old one-room schoolhouse that we had many years ago, and in that scenario, it was also a public school, and I was very supportive of that scenario where parents would hire a teacher for the students in their community. If the teacher did not teach according to their standards, then that teacher was removed. And so it was a public school in an old-fashioned way. I'm opposed to government schools where they have government-imposed standards. And the big problem, I think, with these standards that come from outside our state is that they come along with a socialistic agenda, and our kids are not educated, they are more indoctrinated.
Thank you. We have our third question from the audience, and Mr. MacArthur, you'll be our lead off on this one. How do you feel about the role of lobbyists in government?
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think that, I work for the Arizona Chamber of Commerce, the state chamber right now. And I've worked for the chamber for a little over a year. And during that time, I've had the opportunity to see up close and personal the relationship between lobbyists and legislators and how it works down at the Capitol. And I've met a lot of the lobbyists. I've talked to them. I've gotten to know some of them, met a lot of the legislators. And I do believe that as long as we have legislators who have integrity, who are honest with their constituents, and who are making decisions based on what their constituents want, based on what the people in their district, the people they represent want, then they should be fine working with lobbyists. Lobbyists serve a purpose down at the legislature. We have a citizen legislature. The people on this panel are not experts in a lot of the topics that we have to work on down at the legislature. And so there are times where it is very helpful to call a lobbyist and ask them about something that they are an expert on. So I think that you have to be extremely careful. You have to make sure that there are clear lines drawn with lobbyists, that they know that you make decisions based on what your district wants, based on what your constituents want. But they can definitely be a resource to the legislators down at the Capitol.
Thank you, Mr. MacArthur. Mr. Stevens, How do you feel about the role of lobbyists in government?
You know, one of the first things our founding fathers came up with when they devised the Constitution was the right of the citizens to petition their government for issues or concerns that they had. And when you look at what lobbyists do, and they do serve in the correct setting, they do have a very important role to play. And that is one of the things I've learned in my life and in business is I don't know what I don't know. And I have the intelligence to acknowledge it, and I hope I have the wisdom to listen to advice of people when I bring in people who do know. And if there is an issue that comes up about infrastructure, if there's an issue that comes up about healthcare, then the smartest thing I believe anybody can do is to bring these people in. And at the state capitol, a lot of those people who are experts are what we classify as lobbyists. And I do believe that if you have someone who is honest, who has the integrity necessary to serve there, I do believe that as a legislator, you can be most effective by understanding that you have to sit down and talk with these people because they are the resource you have. Because regardless of how special my mother will tell you I am, I do not know everything. And so, what I would say is that the smartest thing that a legislator really can do at the Capitol is to understand that your vote is not for sale, your principles are not for sale, but that you have to be able to listen. You can't go into the Capitol and say, I will not talk to people, I want nothing to do with lobbyists, I want nothing to do with industry experts, because the minute you do that, you officially corner yourself in as an ineffective legislator, and people won't work with you. And if you can't work with people, that is the definition of being ineffective at what you're doing or trying to do.
Thank you, Mr. Chia. Ms. Townsend?
Thank
How do
you.
you feel about the role of lobbyists in government?
Yes, I have many good friends down at the Capitol that are great at their job, and they have helped us with some of the bills that we may not have that information. I have had one lobbyist really do me wrong and caused some concern and trust, but for the most part, I've had nothing but good experiences with these guys. And I've also seen myself on TV on an undercover video of some kind of dark, thing that getting steaks and whatever else, and that somehow that the lobbyists doing these types of things are going to influence our vote. And what I have to say to that is the minute that you decide how to vote based on who gave you the best steak, it's time for you to retire. But I think that there is some influence there that maybe ought not to be, but that is up to each one of the legislators to decide if they are going to make their decisions based on what they're going to gain from that lobbyist or what the information the lobbyist can give them and vote accordingly based on their conscience, on what's right for the people. And so, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, so anyway, I believe that it's up to the legislator to make good, honest decisions that are with integrity and move forward with the information they give you. And again, if you are accepting gifts that are influencing your decisions, you really need to step down. And I can guarantee you that will never happen with me, regardless of how good the steak is. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Farnsworth, how do you feel about the role of lobbyists in government?
I'm sure glad you asked that question, or whoever asked it, because when I was in the House of Representatives back in the 90s, it was very interesting to see the different lobbyists and the powerful influence they had down there. I remember when I came back to the Senate, came back to the legislature recently, and it was very interesting to see those same lobbyists still there after 20 years. And there are some that are very powerful and very influential. Now, I agree with what's been said that lobbyists fulfill a need, but the need is there, I believe, because citizens are not involved. I tell the story of when I was there in the 90s, we'd get mail in, now we get email, but back then it was snail mail, and we'd get a stack that high every week, and I'd go through it, and we'd have the vast majority was for lobbyists liaisons, government officials, and if you were really lucky, you might get a letter from a real constituent. So they fulfill some needs, but they fulfill the needs because there is a huge hole down there. And the hole in our legislative process is citizen involvement. That's why that's my hot button, to reach out and get people from my district and say, come to the Capitol with me, help me do the research, let's search through those 6 books of legislative laws and change the ones that need to be changed and keep the good ones that are there. Get involved, because with term limits, we just begin to get to understand the process and we're gone. And who's running the government? It's lobbyists and bureaucrats and special interests. So yes, they serve a purpose, but we need to be continually vigilant, very careful, because they do have a powerful influence, and it is sometimes good and often bad.
Mr. Fillmore, how do you feel about the role of lobbyists in government?
About the lobbyists in general, I agree. They do fill a need. They supply you with information. As a state legislature, you do have to have access to both the pros and cons. A smart legislature will never alienate a lobbyist, but will always reach out to both of them, hear both sides. I am one of the people that that does not believe that all the answers have to come from the lobbyists. I believe in today's society with the internet and things of that nature, we should be out and be looking for our own answers sometimes, and the different answers, not the answers that 2 lobbyists are going to give me. I'm very concerned about the cesspool that we have at our state legislature with the amount of money and dark money which flows from the lobbyists and things of that nature. I am one of only 2 election candidates on this table, and I am one of the few people here that could probably write a $50,000 check today and fund it without even fund my campaign without blinking. But I am a clean elections candidate because I believe that the people will support me. I went out in this district, I asked 300 people to give me $5. One of my opponents, who is not here tonight, did not. When our first filings came up in January and I had 300 people give me $5 as an investment in me to represent you at the state legislature, he raised over double the amount of money that I'm going to be allowed to receive from sources and lobbyists and things of that nature to expand Medicaid and Medicare and things of that nature, and he did it all with the assistance of lobbyists. Now, when the legislature meets, if you come to me and you've got a $5 investment, or you don't, you're just from my district, I am wide open receiving because I represent you. But a lobbyist who has carried checks to some of these legislatures for $15,000 or $10,000 or $12,000 or $6,000, do you think they get the same thing? I'm very concerned about that pollution of money.
Thank you, Mr. Fillmore. We have our 4th question from the audience. Some of the candidates already talked about the economy and the importance. So the question is, what in your background suggests you can help improve the economy or create jobs? Mr. Stevens?
I'm really glad that someone asked that question. For as long as I can remember, I've grown up in a family of business owners, job creators. I've been in there, I've seen growing up in the process, and I think a lot of times we sort of devalue that kind of experience of having been around it your whole life. I grew up in a family that started out in manufacturing. Started out when my grandfather started the company. Started out, actually rented the room above the storefront to save money on rent. Ended up starting out with 3 employees. By the time he retired, he had well over 60 employees. By the time his children had taken it and run with it, it became one of the biggest companies in its industry. And when you grow up in that environment, seeing what needs to be done, going from manufacturing into retail sales and doing everything from stacking products to selling to people to meeting with new people to driving out there, there is no substitute for real experience in the private sector. Working with employees, dealing with their issues, dealing with upset clients, understanding the needs of your employees, the people that you work for, as far as your clients. And there is no substitute for it. Unless you have actually been there, you haven't. And I believe that if you have the right people at the legislature, when it comes to bringing business owners to the table, we have a lot of legislators who say they're pro-business, they do the right thing for the business, and then you ask them, how many local business owners have you ever sat down with and said, what regulations are getting in your way from succeeding? What do you need to have happen? That rarely happens, and that's what concerns me. I live in a community of 90,000 people that has been largely ignored for the better part of its entire existence, and that needs to stop.
Thank you. Ms. Townsend, what in your background suggests you can help improve the economy or create jobs?
Thank you for that question, and I kind of have a two-part answer. I'm an independent person by nature, and so my history for the better part of my adult life, as I had told you earlier, was being a doula, which is the birth coach. And I early on learned to become a trainer and equip women to become their own self-employed, so I can't say that I've created jobs in a sense that they're all on my payroll, but I have created numerous jobs where women can go out and make a living doing this, and a pioneering edge that has now gone from something very unheard of to hospitals coming to me asking me to start the programs for them. I also have signed front of paychecks. I have had, a small team, wasn't huge, but I have had experience doing that. And I do know what the regulations and having to go through all the hoops does to small business, and I know what that feels like. And I have worked for huge companies. I've worked for U.S. Airways when it was America West, and was in management. And I worked management most of my life outside of being the doula. And so I know the challenges of a large company. So those are the things on my own personal side. But at the other side, it's just my ideology. As a Republican, I know that big government and a lot of regulation stifles the needs of our small businesses. I received the endorsement of the NFIB because of my stance, and so I will continue to vote in a way that deregulates and gets out of the way of small business in an effort to help grow our economy, because that's where the jobs are. The jobs are created in the private sector.
Thank you. Mr. Farnsworth, what in your background suggests you can help improve the economy or create jobs?
I am an entrepreneur. I have been. It's in the marrow of my bones. I grew up in a family business. When I was 5 years old with my older siblings, I was working in our family business. I had paper routes and started many businesses, and I have always found a common denominator in the challenges in that government always gets in the way of a new business. Now, I know the question addresses jobs, and jobs are important. And if we have common sense in our government, then business will be able to increase and grow and provide more jobs. But in my mind, what is more important than a job is opportunity. Opportunity to make a living. If you choose to be an entrepreneur and have a project and do something on your own and make a living for your family that way, that's a wonderful thing to do. If you decide to start a small business and have a few employees, always the biggest obstacle, most opportunities, most small businesses never start, because as soon as you go down to get the licenses, you find out how grueling it is and how the local government is not your friend. They are there to step on you and make it more as difficult as possible, is what it seems. I was talking to a business owner yesterday who explained just how difficult it was not only to start his business, but to stay in business because of the government overreach. And so I have worked in a lot of different places, corporations. I've been in management and owned my own companies. I sponsored and had passed 5 bills this last session, all having to do with the freedom to act, the freedom to do what we should be able to do with our property and our lives.
Thank you. Mr. Fillmore, what in your background suggests you can help improve the economy or create jobs?
Well, I'm a real entrepreneur, and I'm one that's been here in the district for 27 years. I own the weather shacks on Main Street. I have hired and fired inside of our district for 27 years. I have a sheet metal shop and auto wrecking yard. I'm a real estate broker in 2 states. I have 160 acres up by Lake Tahoe I'd like to develop, and I appreciate the greatness of America, as David just said, is the opportunity that we have to create jobs. We have some unique opportunities in Pinal County for jobs, and I said that. Our mantra should be jobs, 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 not socialism. Jobs, 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 not federal overreach and handouts. You know, I look at what the opportunity we have in the state of Arizona with Red Rock and the transfer station down there, 11 to 12,000 jobs for the state of Arizona immediately, and it's politics that hold it. I spoke for a second about Superstition Vistas and how we were looking to build homes and businesses and everything right here in Apache Junction, button right up next to the airport, right here where we're at. And it got put on hold and then destroyed because of bureaucracy and regulations and held back. I have been the vice president of the 27th largest home center in the country. I don't have a formal education, but this country has given me the opportunity through entrepreneurship to make so much more. I have made payroll for 27 years in the district. I am hiring. I'm hiring tomorrow. I'll pay someone $20 an hour. You want to come help me tomorrow unload truckloads of swamp coolers out in 104-degree weathers? I am an entrepreneur, and I believe that what we need are jobs, and I put my mouth and my money up, and I've done it in our district for 27 years, and I will continue to do so.
Thank you. Mr. MacArthur?
Yeah.
What in your background suggests you can help improve the economy or create jobs?
I'm also glad this question was asked because I think that we need people who are going to seek to represent us down at the state senate who are going to focus on the issues that really matter. And jobs and the economy, I think, is the most important thing that we can focus on right now down at the state senate. I also think it's extremely important that we have someone who has the right background and experience to do that. And I do have that background and experience. I'm fortunate to have worked for Senator John Kyle, someone who I think is one of the greatest public servants that we've had in this state. And I learned a lot from him. From there, I worked for a good conservative Congressman, Paul Gosar, another great public servant, someone who taught me that you never compromise on your principles. And I worked for him until I moved over to the Arizona Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And it's there that I've really learned a lot about how business and government interact and about how government can stifle business in our state. At the Arizona Chamber, we have members from some of the largest companies in our state to some of the smallest. And every single day, I get to talk to those members. I get to hear about the issues that are affecting their companies. I get to ask them about which regulations are hindering their growth. I get to ask them about what do we need to do to allow businesses to continue to grow in our state. And so I think that we definitely need someone who has the right background and experience. I also think, though, that we need someone who will focus on this issue, who will focus on jobs and the economy. We have too many people that go down to the state senate, and they focus on issues that matter to them. They focus on special interest issues. They focus on the wrong things. And we've seen what the results of that are. And Mr. Farnsworth, I think he's a great guy. I think he's a nice person. But I believe that when he went down to the state senate, he did exactly that. He focused on the wrong things. And he focused on chickens and sewers and Armageddon EMP bills. I don't even know. But he didn't focus on jobs and the economy. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to run for the Arizona Senate. So we need someone who will focus on the issues that matter. Jobs and the economy is number one. Education is close after because it is extremely connected to whether or not we're going to have a thriving economy in our state. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Our next question, and Ms. Townsend, you'll be our lead off on this one. How do you feel about voucher systems for education?
We have so many school districts, and I think that the private sector is a good example in that competition drives success. And with all these districts and so much admin going on, we're so top-heavy in our education system. And so I do believe in parental choice. I myself have my children in 2 different schools. The reason being, I have a special needs daughter, and she needs a smaller school, and she's in a charter school. And I have my son who wants to be in band and all the other things, and he feels better in a public school. And so for me, it works. For each parent, they should have that choice to put their child where that child's going to thrive. Because when my daughter was in public school, she wasn't thriving. She needed a certain location. So as a parent, it's important to have that choice. And then for the system itself, it's that competition that's going to drive the change. It's going to cause the schools to try to perform better, to retain those children, that they get a certain amount of money per head. So I think that it's a good idea. I support it, and I'm a proponent for this.
Thank you. Mr. Farnsworth, how do you feel about voucher systems for education?
I think we should use every tool available to give parents choice. If we can't provide vouchers and call them vouchers, we need to find another way that's similar, because as long as we're spending millions and millions of dollars on public schools here in Arizona, the parents should be able to choose where they send their children. I believe in supply and demand in business, and I believe in supply and demand in our education. The top schools will attract the top students, and the failing schools deserve to fail. They need to be shut down if they don't succeed. And so we need to be continually looking for more ways, including vouchers or something similar to that, to provide that school choice. Now, I think the Arizona Chamber of Commerce prefers more control and things like Common Core and so forth. And to respond, I'll take my last little time to respond to a comment that comes down to education and understanding, and that is that all the bills that I sponsored in the legislature were in response to people in the district that were requesting help because they felt like their property rights were taken away. And I might mention that electromagnetic pulse bill that Mr. MacArthur likes to make fun of was actually in response to Senator John Kyle, who he honors. Senator John Kyle and his letter was what prompted my concern to sponsor that bill, which simply asked the Arizona Department of Emergency and Military Affairs to post on their website an additional warning of a potential electromagnetic pulse occurrence, which Senator John Kyle was very, very concerned about, and also Congressman Trent Franks is working on very feverishly right now.
Thank you, Mr. Farnsworth. Mr. Fillmore, how do you feel about voucher systems for education?
I'm very, very, very supportive of voucher systems. And I have to very simply just put out there, why should we not allow parents to have their funds, their tax dollars, be put where they feel they can get the best education for their children? What is wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that. Yes, we have a public education system. Some people might laugh when I say this. I'm a product of public education. But it has changed, and we need to have that out there, the opportunity for competition, and I think that we have gotten away from that in our systems. What we need to do is to allow both public and private schools to have the vouchers, to allow the children to go where they want and have competition, give our kids the best education possible. Now, I can go on and elaborate about certain things and opportunities and things of that nature, but to me, the question is just, it's very simple. What's wrong with the voucher system? Where should the money be spent? And who should dictate where you spend your money to educate your children? It's a very simple thing to me. Mr. MacArthur?
Yeah.
It's yours.
Thank you. I also am in favor of parental choice in education, like I said. I mean, when you look at our state, we do have some areas where we need improvement in our education system, but there are also pockets of excellence. There are places in our state where schools are doing extremely well. Out of the top 10 high schools in the entire country, 3 are in Arizona. So we see that it can be done. And oftentimes it's done in places where there are disadvantaged students, in places where it's extremely difficult to run an effective school. So I think that we need to find those pockets of excellence. We need to find those schools, and we need to help them expand. And one of the ways that we can do that is by allowing parents to choose and decide where their kids go to school. I think choice is extremely important, and I believe that the people of Arizona are capable of making that choice for themselves. I think that they're capable of making those choices for themselves in a lot of different instances. In fact, I think that we should encourage choice in every chance that we have. And Senator Farnsworth, I don't know if you agree with me on that. I'd actually like to ask you about that, because Senator Farnsworth has advocated to repeal the 17th Amendment. If you know what the 17th Amendment is, it's the amendment that took the right to elect our United States senators away from the state legislatures and gave it to the people of Arizona, the people of our country. So you and I now get to vote for whoever we'd like to represent us in the United States Senate. Jeff Flake most recently, or whoever you decided to vote for. Mr. Farnsworth has said that was disastrous when that happened, that we should take that right to vote away from the citizens, give it back to him and his buddies down at the state legislature so that they can decide, so that they can choose who will represent you in the United States Senate. And so I say that if you are smart enough to make decisions for your children's education, to decide, what doctor you'll have, what career path you want, I also think that you can make a decision on who you want to represent you in your government. And I don't think that the legislators or the senators are much smarter or more well-equipped to make that decision than the citizens of Arizona. So, thank you.
Mr. Stevens, same question.
As I've said before, no parent should be in a position where they feel like they have no choice but to send their child to a failing school. I do believe that a parent should be given every resource necessary that they can have to educate their child and put them in the best position to succeed. Because if you think about it, no matter what else, no matter how many ornaments you want to put on the issue of education, it really comes down to a very simple issue. And that is, as a parent, it is a natural state of mind to try and do everything you can to put your child in the best position for them to eventually one day, however you want to say it, stand on their own 2 feet, so that they can eventually go and raise their own family, to provide for their own children. And if we do not solve that problem in education, it will not take very long for us to see what happens when a community collapses. And in that regard, I believe that the most important thing we can do at the legislature is to sit down, like I've said, with teachers, with parents, with students, with administrators, with the business community, to say, what can we do to bring in innovation? Because the traditional methods of educating students, as we've seen over the years, has changed a lot for the worse. I mean, I have people I know who have graduated top of their class from Arizona public high schools, some of which are ranked as better high schools, and you ask them who signed the Monroe Doctrine, and you get a blank stare. And that shows that even in what we consider good schools, there's been a real backslide, and our children deserve better. And you got to ask yourself, and I'll leave you with one quick question before the timer goes, and that's this. Who do you think is better prepared to enter the workforce at the age of 18, a high school graduate from 1965 or a high school graduate from public school in 2014? And there is no comparison, and that's our fault, and that's our problem.
Okay, thank you. We'll have a couple more questions. You've been at it an hour here, so I think we'll have 2 more. And this one maybe can be quick. And it's one that comes off the list of questions that have been suggested by some of the clean elections. And we'll start with Mr. Farnsworth. A lot of people are texting. Everywhere we go, we're texting. We're all doing that. So should texting while driving be banned in Arizona?
No, it should not, for one simple reason, that our liberty is being attacked in every angle. Now, obviously, it is very, very foolish and very dangerous to text and drive. But the proper role of government is to protect the liberty of the people. And that is very simple. And I'm glad that Mr. MacArthur brought up the subject of the 17th Amendment, because I love to talk about that. You know, in our country, our founders, the Constitution of the United States was inspired by God. I believe He raised up our founders to create this document. And in that document, they created a very delicate balance. In government, you have two extremes. One is tyranny and one is anarchy. Either one of them is very bad. What our founders found was that perfect balance in the middle of the proper amount of government. With the 17th Amendment, you have to realize that a lot of our younger people, and Mr. MacArthur and I get along fine. I think he's a great guy, and I think one of these days he's going to make a great public servant. But, you know, it takes a long time to gain wisdom. It's a painful process to gain wisdom.
So it's wise to take the right to vote away from the citizens?
My turn.
No interaction, please, among the candidates.
Okay, I didn't.
If I can have another 20 seconds for that interruption, I'd appreciate it. The founders developed this proper balance, and the U.S. Senate was designed to protect states' rights. That's what it was all about. And in 1913, yes, we had a disaster in the 17th Amendment. The problem is the public schools are teaching that we are a democracy. We're not a democracy, we're a republic. When you pledge allegiance to the flag, you do not pledge allegiance to the democracy, you pledge allegiance to the republic. 17th Amendment, though it sounds very democratic, and it is, to allow citizens to elect senators that threw everything out of balance because there's no one to protect states' rights. We, instead of having a House of Representatives in Congress that represents the people and the Senate that represents the states, we have two houses of representatives. That's why we have an out-of-control federal government.
Thank you. Mr. Fillmore, should texting while driving be banned in Arizona?
If we pass laws to protect people from their stupidity, all we really do is weaken the gene pool. And I say that in humor, but it's not funny because other people get killed as well. I agree with Mr. Farnsworth. It is a liberty thing, but it's also like having free speech and getting inside a movie theater and screaming fire. I am very concerned when I go down the highway at 80 miles an hour, and I love to speed, and I go down the highway at 80 miles an hour, and I see a 19-year-old know-nothing go by me like this, texting away. I'm also concerned when I go down the freeway at 50 miles an hour, and in the left-hand lane of life, I get a retiree that's going down the freeway like this. Both of them take away from what they should be doing, which is focusing on the road. I believe that the state of Arizona has ample room to put a very severe $500 to $750 fine for texting while you're on the freeway. Enforcing it, that's going to be another issue. What are you going to do? Take their telephones away from them? Try to pinpoint? You know what? It's just putting it out there will reduce a lot of it. But I agree with Mr. Farnsworth. Every time we do something like this, we take away a little bit of that liberty that we really, really cherish. That's a fine line. I'd have to look at the legislation to say how I would vote on that. That's all I got to say.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Fillmore, Mr. MacArthur, should texting while driving be banned in Arizona?
The government's responsibility is to protect people's liberty. And I think that it infringes on someone else's liberty to drive down the road in a safe manner when someone's texting. And we've seen too many deaths. So I think that it is something that I would consider. I asked the question, how many more people have to die in a car accident because someone was texting while they're driving before we finally decide, okay, maybe we should try and find a way to stop people from doing this. So I would consider that. But back to a different topic real quickly here. No, one second, I'm sorry. Mr. Farnsworth likes to talk in a condescending way and talk about wisdom and experience, and that's fine. No, I'm gonna respond to this. I'm sorry.
I'm the moderator. Can you just
So you're
focus?
gonna- He got the full time to talk about whatever he wanted, correct?
I'm going to ask you to answer the question. Have you answered the question?
No,
on
I'm not
texting?
done yet.
Okay. Keep
Okay,
going.
thank you. So it is about liberty. And I believe in people's liberty and their right to vote to elect their United States Senator. And Mr. Farnsworth still has not explained why he believes that he is better equipped, that him and his buddy down at the Capitol, that they are better equipped to elect your United States Senator than you are? And that's a question I think that he should answer. And you know what? Wisdom is great, and I've worked extremely hard to gain the experience I have. And anyone looking at the stage, you can tell I'm younger than my opponent. It's true. And I don't have the experience of being a career politician who's run for office over and over and over and over again, who's only won once and has lost all the other times, but has run for office constantly, over and over and over the years. I don't think that's a bad thing. I'm proud of that. And I think we need some new blood. I think we need some new ideas and people who really will fight for their constituents and fight for liberty. So thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Stevens, should texting be banned in the state of, while driving be banned in the state of Arizona?
You know, when I started to learn how to drive, the very first thing after put your seatbelt on that my father taught me was that if you're not paying attention and you're not doing the right thing, what you are doing is you are driving a 75-mile-an-hour metal missile. And if you're not careful, you will kill yourself, or you could. You will harm others around you. And that is something I think that, you know, when we talk about, you know, having liberties, and I do believe that we shouldn't, I'd be very skeptical about looking at banning it. My immediate reaction would be not to. I think that, like you said, you start to creep on individual freedoms and rights, even if it's a stupid thing like texting while driving. And you start to say, okay, at what point do you stop rationalizing that, you know, well, we'll just take a little bit more and a little more. I agree with Mr. Fillmore. Maybe we should look at a severe fine if it's found out. I know a lot of times now, especially with teen car accidents, a lot of police officers now will take a look at the person's phone to see if there was a text message sent any time in the near time that accident occurred. And if that's the case, then, you know, I think that there may be a responsible reaction would be a fine. But I think the first thing what we have to talk about when it comes to texting and driving really is, you know, with personal freedoms and liberties, there also is a great amount of responsibility that comes with that. And we usually don't talk about that as much when we talk about freedom. We don't talk about, you know what, sure, you have the right to text and drive, doesn't mean you should. And it doesn't mean that it's the actions of a responsible citizen to do so. And, you know, to sort of end on it, I'd say that, you know, I was taught to drive by my father. A lot of people here were probably taught either by a parent or by a friend. And I think that the best thing we can do is to remember that I was taught to be responsible, and that came from my parents, and I think that's something that we need to look at again, is getting those parents involved and teaching about responsible behavior.
Thank you. Ms. Townsend, should texting while driving be banned?
One of the planks in the Republican platform is personal responsibility, isn't it? And so to sit here and tell you that I am for adding more regulation and not honoring the person's their integrity to honor the safety of other drivers on the road, I don't think I could stand and say I'm following my Republican principles. So I cannot support for that reason. And it's already, to some extent, you talk to any police officer, they could pull you over and cite you now for reckless driving. Adding a new law isn't going to change the behavior of the people on the road. We have to change the culture. We have to demand integrity. And we see here tonight a blatant disregard of the rules. And this has to change in a personal level. This has to change in a governmental level and out in public. And I tell you tonight, think long and hard about who you're voting for. Not because they say the right words or whatever, but watch their actions. And do they go by what the law says? And here tonight, we've seen very clear demonstration of that. And so I can stand behind Senator Farnsworth and tell you his character is solid. And he does go by the rule of law all the way down to his street signs. So I think that, no, I will not and never will vote to add any law to ban texting because it's already illegal if you're driving recklessly. Thank you.
Okay, last question. What is the role of the state government with regard to immigration protection of the border? Mr. Fillmore, can you start that one off?
The obligation of the state of Arizona is to protect its citizens. When the federal government fails to fulfill its required duties under the Constitution of the United States and immigration, I believe it is presumptive to say that the state of Arizona should not do so. I believe the state of Arizona has the right, the moral authority, and the duty to protect their citizens when it comes to federal immigration laws, and not care what the federal government says about that. I believe that we have the right to force people to come into our state to vote, to show proper documentation, to vote. I believe that we have the right to withhold social services to people who trespass not only upon America, but upon the state of Arizona. This state is the greatest state in the union, bar none. I made this my home almost 30 years ago. I love this state, but I also see the encroachment. And I want to say that I believe the majority of people in the state of Arizona feel the same way I do, because when historically we go back to Proposition 300 and 200 and 202 and all the propositions that said we should speak English, that we should not have rights for people who have trespassed upon our state to be able to get social services or be able to walk out on bail and then leave the state. The Chamber of Commerce feels that that is incorrect. The Chamber of Commerce wants cheap labor. What we don't need in this state is cheap labor with taking away jobs from American citizens in the state of Arizona that need the jobs that are important. What we need to do is focus upon the trespassing and the true cost of the state of Arizona. I believe the state of Arizona has full authority to do a whole gamut of things which they are not doing and don't have the testicle fortitude to do.
Thank you. Mr. MacArthur, what role does the state of Arizona have when it comes to immigration and protection of the border?
Thank you. I think that we have to secure our border. I mean, we've seen these past few months that the border is not secure. And so when it comes to illegal immigration, that is the first thing that we have to focus on. In the end, it is the federal government's responsibility to do that. But we've seen with this administration that they're not going to do it. And I think that if we don't realize that, then we're being pretty naive if we don't realize that they are not going to secure our border. And so we have to do all that we can as a state to do so. It's going to be difficult. It's going to take some money. It's going to take people coming together and realizing and making this a priority. But I think that we can do it. I'm proud to have Sheriff Paul Babu's endorsement in this race. Someone who deals with and fights the results of illegal immigration in our state every single day. And so I plan on working with Sheriff Babu, on working with law enforcement in Arizona to make sure that they have the resources and the tools necessary to combat the results of illegal immigration in our state. I think that's one thing we definitely can do and we should be doing, is working with law enforcement to make sure that they have the resources necessary to protect our neighborhoods. It is a primary responsibility of government to protect its citizens. And so I'll do all that I can to make sure that law enforcement, that fire emergency services are all, have the resources and tools necessary to make sure that we have safe neighborhoods. Thank you.
Mr. Stevens, what's the role of Arizona state government when it comes to immigration and protection of the border?
I think one of the first things to consider is that when you look at when this country was founded, it was founded with a very unique principle that was relatively new to the world at the time, and that was the idea that our federal government exists out of powers lent to it by sovereign states. And I do believe that while the immigration issue as a policy is the federal government's responsibility, the federal government has made it, at least the current government, has made it clear that it's not going to deal with that. And at that point, I do believe it is the responsibility of the state to do what it can, because the safety and security and well-being of the citizens of the state of Arizona should always be non-negotiable. And at that point, I would say that we do need to work with local law enforcement to, one, secure our border, and if that does require the fight that most likely it will come down from the federal government, then I believe that's a fight that we're morally obligated to fight. I think we need to get our law enforcement community the tools they need to definitely cut down, because it's not just the illegal immigration where we have the effect on our economy from jobs, but we have drug cartels, especially with the chaos going on the border right now, that are running wild. And we need to let those people know that these are our streets, they're our kids, they're our communities, and this is not going to be the turf where they want it to be. We're going to take them back, and we're going to take them back hard. When I was a kid growing up in Western Connecticut, Mayor Giuliani, Rudy Giuliani, became mayor of a city that no one really wanted to go to, but he came out with a very simple culture, which is We've had enough of this garbage and we're going to clean it up. And if no one else is going to help me, I'm going to do it myself. And he worked with law enforcement and he gave them what they needed. And right now, my biggest concern, what we have, besides the illegal immigration, which our state needs to deal with, right now you have groups from MS-13 and other drug cartel groups and other street gangs that are going into these detention centers where there are young children and they are actively recruiting in the open. That needs to stop and we need to cut that off now.
Thank you. Ms. Townsend?
Thank you.
Arizona State Government with regard to protect immigration and protection of the border.
Thank you. I'm going to read from the Constitution. This is Article 1, Section 10. No state shall, without the consent of Congress, lay any duty of tonnage, keep troops or ships of war in time of peace, enter into any agreement or compact with another state or with a foreign power, or engage in war unless, no state shall do these things unless actually invaded or such imminent danger will not admit it of delay. So we know that it's not the job of Arizona to deport citizens back to their countries, to repatriate citizens. We know that that's the job of the federal government. So to say that we are going to enforce immigration in that manner is short-sighted and wrong. We had ideas of possibly, for individuals who are here that were disenchanted with the whole process, wanted to go back home voluntarily. That was the question. Can Arizona send them home for a $400 ticket versus how much it's going to cost to support them? Can we send them home if they go voluntarily? We looked at that. But it also says back in Article 1, Section 8, to establish a uniform rule of naturalization is the job of Congress. A uniform rule of naturalization. And we see policies coming out of Washington right now, like DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, and other policies that are bringing these people here. And so what we need to do is make sure that we're electing people beyond folks like Senator Flake and Senator McCain who support the amnesty. We need to change our own culture and elect people who will do their job at the federal level.
Thank you. Mr. Farnsworth, what's the role of state of Arizona government with regard to immigration and the border?
This is a perfect example of what the damage that the 17th Amendment has done, because those senators we have in Washington, which I know that certain individuals really like them because they've been endorsed by them, but they are not representing the state of Arizona. We should be following the rule of law. If there's a bad law in the books, it should be changed, but while it is there, it should be abided by. These folks that are coming up from south of the border, the first act in America is to break the law by coming in illegally. Now, what's to prevent them from breaking other laws? We see a great problem in our state of breaking laws. A lot of our prisons are full of illegal aliens. Now, there's a greater problem in that, and that is not only people from south of the border are coming up, but people from all across the world. We are being invaded by people, by gangs and people who intend to disrupt this country. And they are sneaking in with these innocent children that are being promised that all they have to do is get here and they will have their citizenship. Arizona needs to do whatever it takes to seal the borders. And I believe that the 9th Amendment and the 10th Amendment of the Constitution makes it plain that Arizona has the right to do whatever needs to be done. We need to respect the laws that are out there, including when we place a sign outside of the 15-foot limit that someone shouldn't come along and put them right next to the street, which is illegal. We need to respect all the laws, including our immigration laws. Thank you.
Okay, we've come to the end of the questions, so now is the time for your closing statement. And we're going to switch the order. We're going to start with Ms. Townsend. She'll start with her closing statements, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Again, it's been a pleasure to serve you guys, and I look forward to doing that again. And I want to share with you who supports me in that reelection process. I have endorsements from organizations such as Arizona Right to Life, the NRA, Gun Rights Across America, Arizona Association of Realtors, and National Federation of Independent Businesses. I'm supported by great individuals like former President of the Senate, Russell Pierce, Sheriff Joe Arpaio, Senator David Farnsworth, Major General Paul Vallely, for those of you who know him, and even Mayor Scott Smith, who has enjoyed my willingness to reach out to him and work together on a full spectrum of people in the political community. I've received the Hero of the Taxpayer Award and the Champion of the Taxpayer Award, both years respectively. I was one of the top 10 conservative legislators in the 2013 session. I received the Friend of the Family Award by the Arizona Family Project. I was in the top 1/3 of House Representatives for the percentage of my bills passed. And I placed first in our recent straw poll in our Legislative District 16 precinct committeemen, those who are active daily and know the issues that are going on. They have put their support behind me by a large margin and want to send me back to the legislature. While I was at the legislature, I was co-chair of the Veterans Caucus. I myself am a veteran, and I made an oath to that Constitution, and that's important to me because I see it's under attack, and I care about our veterans. I care about this country, and I have done many things to fight for the cause, and I want to continue fighting for you guys. And one of those things that I've done recently is I went to Indianapolis to the it's called the Assembly of State Legislatures now. It was the Mount Vernon Assembly, to discuss a potential Article 5 convention. And I was able to meet legislators from around the country who were also very interested in restoring our republic, restoring this country. And when I was out there, it was almost historic, sitting with folks that, we haven't had our state legislators coming together all at once without any other organization putting the thing on, just for all of us coming together and saying we are here because we're willing to fight for what's right for this country. We didn't get supported by any lobbyists. We went on our own dime. And it was an honor to do that. They elected me the chair of the Communications Committee so that I can go forward and explain to the rest of the country what we're doing and why we're doing it. So I have had a fabulous, very successful 2 years down at the legislature, and I've had quite a few excellent bills get signed by the governor that I'm very proud of, and I feel like my work is not done by any means. And I want to go back. You guys can trust that I will fight for your rights, which I think are very important. And I appreciate your vote. My name is Kelly Townsend, and I look forward to this next session.
Mr. Stevens, you have 3 minutes for your closing statement.
Well, I want to thank everybody for showing up, and especially everyone on this panel. I'm sure part of me as a candidate is afraid I'm going to open the door. There's going to be another storm, and we're going to be out till 5 o'clock in the morning fixing signs again. But the biggest reason why I am running for the State House is because my generation will be, if we don't correct what's going on, the first generation to inherit an America that is less prosperous, less free, and offers people less opportunities than any time before. And I look at that and that frightens me. And I sit here and I say to myself again, we passed in the last year 280 new laws passed our legislature. And over the summer, this state lost almost 60,000 jobs. You can paint any amount of new shiny paint on that car. It is a beaten down, broken jalopy, and I don't care how shiny red paint you paint it with. The fact is that we need legislators who make jobs and make economic opportunities a priority, not a footnote, not a, well, if a bill comes up that I like, I'll kind of go with it. It needs to be the #1 priority. We need legislators who are in their district, who are active in their district. We need legislators who are paying attention to what's going on the ground. And I believe that it is time for my generation, who's been accused of many things, from indifference to many other things that are a lot less nice sounding than that. But I'm here to tell you that I'm ready to stand up for my generation, for my country, for my state. I've been active in my community for a long time. When no one else would actually come down, me and a bunch of civic leaders from my community stood up and said, you know what? Our children have no parks. They have no opportunities to do anything except to hang around the Circle K at 10 o'clock at night. So let's actually go out there and start a youth sports league. Let's actually get kids opportunities to be a more positive part of the community. These are things that we need. We need actual citizen legislators who understand that they represent a community and they represent their neighbors. That's what's important. Not headlines, not Fox News interviews, not getting on the radio to say, look at what I've done. That is what's most important. Because I think about how great this country has treated my family. When my family came to this country, I mean, the very concept of being able to own a business and make as much money as you could and the government wouldn't arrest you, I mean, that is such a profound thought. I mean, that's what this country represented. My family waited for 4 years to come to this country through the front door, and I believe that that's something we have to focus on. I'm here to tell you that if you want real experience in business and job creation, if you want experience in education as a product of school choice, that's something I think is important. And if you want to deal with issues from the border and likewise, elect someone who's actually been there and done that and seen it. I'm Adam Stevens. I'm running for the State House, and I would definitely appreciate your support and your vote. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Mr. MacArthur. 3 minutes for your closing statement.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for being here and taking the time to learn more. Like I said in the beginning, I'm running because I'm concerned about our state's future. I'm concerned about the direction that we're going in, and my wife and I, we plan on living in Arizona for a long time. We plan on raising our family here. And we want Arizona to be a great place, the great place that it has been for us as we've grown up. In this race, you have two choices. And it's very clear. You can choose between either a career politician who obviously thinks that he knows better than me, obviously thinks he knows better than you, or you can choose someone who is running with a servant's heart, who wants to be your representative at our state capitol. I want to serve you. And I promise you that if elected to the Senate, I will listen to the people. And I'll make decisions based on what we believe is best for the state of Arizona. I would still ask Mr. Farnsworth to please explain why he believes that him and the others down at the state capitol are better equipped to vote on who will represent you at the U.S. Senate than you are. I think that's an extremely important issue. When I heard that, and I wouldn't bring it up if I didn't believe that it meant something. And when I heard that, I had to bring it up, and I'm sorry, but I think that it's important. Because I believe that the people of Arizona are capable of making that decision. I agree. We need to do more to strengthen states' rights in America, but that's not how we do it, by taking away your right to vote. So I want to thank you again for coming tonight. Thank you for taking the time to listen and learn more. And once again, I hope that I'll have your support. I hope that I'll have your vote. My name's Taylor MacArthur, and I'm running for the Arizona Senate. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fillmore, 3 minutes for your closing statement.
My name is John Fillmore, and I would like to represent you. I am real. It's obvious tonight, you've seen, I am not eloquent. I don't have the grasp of some of the words that some of these people up here do. I make no qualms about it. I only have a high school education, but I have an unbelievable belief in the freedoms and the greatness of America and the opportunities that this country has and will continue to offer. I don't chase Article 5 conventions, or I don't talk about what my parents did. I'm there. I've done it. I've opened jobs. I've done the things that are important for our district. I have endorsements. I don't talk about them. I have the endorsement of Paul Babu. I have the endorsement of Russell Pierce. I have the endorsement of every one of the county Republican supervisors in Pinal County. I have the endorsement of both of the school superintendents for Pinal and Maricopa County. But that's not the important thing. The important thing is that I understand our mantra is jobs, jobs, jobs. And I talk about things that have to be done. We have 227 school districts. We only have 15 counties. Imagine if we got rid of 100 school districts, kept that money in the classroom, allowed it for the teachers to have more money to work with the kids, to educate them. We got away from this overreach by federal government and the Common Core stuff that they want to shove down our throats. And we talked about what kids need to do to be able to make decisions, to make budgets. I make budgets. I hire and fire and work every day. And this is what our country is all about. The opportunities are there that our kids should have and that we want to do it. I am real. I am very black and white. I am blunt. So I will say things that you people will laugh at, but inside your heart, you're going to know that what I talk about is true. I've heard some things here today. Some of them to me I find extremely funny. Some of them are very, very serious. I disagree really with Mr. MacArthur on the article, the 17th Amendment. That's one of the worst things that ever happened to America. We have United States senators that don't respect our country with the love that they should and protect it like they should because they don't represent us. They're playing on an international stage. But I deal with specifics. I talk about the things that have to change. The black money that's coming from the lobbyists, that's going to those people, that allowed people to literally be bought their votes for that Medicaid expansion in this country that is going to cost us millions. I have a better rating than most of these from the Chamber of Commerce, but I would never get their endorsement. I'm John Fillmore. I'm what I am, and I ask for your vote and your support. Thank you very much.
Mr. Farnsworth, 3 minutes for your closing statement.
Thank you. I do have a list of endorsements also, and I realize and I agree that those are not the important things. Congressman Matt Salmon, Congressman Trent Franks, Sheriff Joe Arpaio, Right to Life, Russell Pierce, Sheriff Richard Mack, Gun Rights Across America, National Federation of Independent Businesses. And Mr. MacArthur and I like to have fun together. We kind of joust back and forth. We compete out on the streets to see who can get the most signs out and the best locations and so forth. And so it's good. It's challenging to compete with someone who is already in office, and I've been very successful in passing bills. And I don't see anyone else making fun of bills that are passed except those who have never done it and do not realize what a challenge it is. The question we need to ask ourselves is if a constituent comes to us and asks us to do something, we have the difficult challenge of deciding whether that's a proper role of government. And Mr. MacArthur loves to make fun of what's lovingly called the chicken bill. And the Homegrown Freedom Act is not about chickens, it's about property rights. A constituent in the district came to me and said, will you please help us to have property rights to be able to do things on our own property? I said, well, how would you like to proceed? And the group he was involved with said, let's start with ownership of chickens. So I realize that it's confusing to someone that really doesn't have a good grasp on the proper role of government to see something like that and call one thing a chicken bill and a sewer bill when in reality we're talking about property rights. Pizza Hut was in trouble because the city of Mesa was shutting them down. They'd been in business for 18 years. They had 30 employees, and the city of Mesa came along and said they had to build 600 feet of sewer line, connect to it, and then give it to the city, and they couldn't open till it was done. Well, that was pretty absurd. That was an overreach. And when ADEQ went to them at our request and said, by what authority are you doing this? They said, by your authority. And ADEQ said, no, City of Mesa, you are overstepping your bounds. And so it's interesting that I got 5 bills passed. The Capital Times said I was the most productive of all the freshman legislators. It's interesting that Mr. MacArthur calls me a career politician. I've been in the legislature for about 3 years, and that's far from a career. But I love America. I understand the proper role of government, and I have the courage to stand up, and my time is done. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Farnsworth. Well, that is the end of this session. First of all, we would like to thank the candidates for participating in this forum. I'd like to personally thank you for stepping up and running for elected office. It's a oftentimes thankless job, and so I personally appreciate that you would take on this challenge and put yourself out there and work so hard in this hot weather to get elected. Let's give the candidates a round of applause. We'd like to thank all of you in the audience who took the time to come out and inform yourselves before voting. We encourage you to find out more about clean elections and the candidates running for offices by visiting www.azcleanelections.gov. A video of this forum, as well as other clean election forums, will be posted on that site within 22 hours of the scheduled forum. We also encourage you to complete the survey you received when you arrived and return it to the registration table at the back of the room. If you did not receive a survey, they are available at the registration table. Again, thank you all for coming tonight, and good night.